Okay, today we're gabbing with Brian Moylan, Vulture's recapper extraordinaire, preeminent Bravo expert, one of the best in the biz. And as I mentioned in a recent episode, I've been thinking a lot lately about sort of the state of the reality TV villain and sort of the importance of respecting our villains, but also I feel like we're in an age of like increasing intolerance for villainous behavior on TV. And so those are kind of in conflict with one another. So Brian, to me, felt like the best person to bring on and to discuss this topic. He knows this world so well. So, Brian, thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm good, and I feel like, as an Ursula the Sea Witch, I'm very, I have a villainous streak in me. So
A self-proclaimed Ursula. Okay.
self-proclaimed Ursula. So you
Okay.
poor unfortunate souls, get ready.
No, but I mean, like you are somebody who's not afraid to say an unpopular opinion and to go against the grain in this environment that can sometimes be not forgiving about that kind of opinion, you know?
No, absolutely. And I feel like it's weird that, I don't like to get too political,
Right.
in public, but it's gotten to this place where, politics and reality TV have gotten the same place where it's like, if
Sure.
you don't like the same person I like, then I hate you and I'm going to say terrible things about you. But like at the end of the day, we all love the same stupid thing. So
Yeah.
like, why can't we remember that? And like,
So
even
true.
if you like Erica Jane and I hate Erica. It's probably the other way around. Even though you hate Erica Jane and I like Erica Jane, doesn't mean you need to like call me terrible names or whatever the hell. It just means like
We have different
we
opinions.
like different
Right.
things.
That's
Yeah,
my
and
opinion.
I
Exactly. To quote a
that's
villain.
right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I do love about the fandom, Housewives especially, is that, I like it when we can have kind of good natured debates about like
Same.
she's my favorite, she's my least favorite, whatever. Because for every housewife, there's people that love them and there's people that hate them, except for maybe Teddy Mellencamp, who I've never met someone who likes her. But
Except you wrote about it recently in your great newsletter where you gave me a really unwell shout out. But you mentioned that
how dare you?
when Carlos King was on this show, he advocated for her to come back. Not, and I don't think it was because he necessarily loves her. I think, or maybe he does,
Right.
but I think it was more from like a sort of a utility standpoint. You know what I mean? In terms of
Yes.
I think that Teddy is somebody who probably, if she came back to a show like Beverly Hills, she could play the villain role. You know, she
100%.
would be unafraid to do that.
Well, and I feel like it's since her podcast era,
Yeah.
she's become sort of a Bravo troublemaker
Yeah.
in a way that I love that she never was on the show. And yeah, so I would be here for like
Okay.
like when she showed up and was like, "Welcome,
Yeah.
Housewives and Vicky." I was
I
like,
mean, it was a great moment, you know? It really was.
best thing she ever did on screen. I mean,
Yeah, it's almost like she'd be good as like a troublemaking friend of. Like I don't need too much of her, but stir it
yes,
up enough. Yeah, totally. All right. So
yeah.
before we jump into the big kind of issue facing villains right now, what in your mind does it mean to be a reality TV villain, and why is it important to a show, particularly a Bravo show, to have one?
I think the villain is typically a I'm not afraid to make friends type reality television person. I mean, going back to like Richard Hatch, where,
Totally.
if you rewatch the first season of Survivor, everybody's like, oh, Richard's playing the game and we just want to be out here and experience blah, blah, blah. And Richard's saying, no, I'm here to win. I have a goal in mind and I'm going to do it. And so I think it's someone who goes against the grain a bit, says unpopular things, and also in terms of housewives, kind of someone who is pushing the story along in a certain way and maybe courting conflict
Hmm.
or setting up conflict amongst other people in a way that is going to pay
Ruffle
off
feathers.
for fans. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Right. Like rather than, there's definitely those people who get mad but are generally,
Yeah.
kind of nice.
Totally,
Yeah,
totally. And like, and this is not a Bravo, but like, I watch Big Brother still after all these years, and like, there's a bad
same.
trend. There's a trend on that show where like people want to vote with the house. They don't want to vote kind of against the green, and
Yes.
like that's sort of, I think, indicative of this larger sort of trend in reality TV. When you hear reality TV villain, when you hear that label, who jumps to your mind from Bravo, from any period?
Oh, that I mean, Lisa Rinna, great
Yeah,
villain. Tamra Judge, great villain. Leanne Locken, excellent
totally,
villain.
excellent.
Uh, Slightly racist, but
Problematic for sure, no question. But when she was good,
yeah,
she
a
was
great
good at her
villain.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, Jax Taylor,
Hmm.
Sashi Schroeder. I'm trying Lindsay Hubbard, great villain. Yeah, the people who are,
Yeah.
yeah, quick to
They're kind of lightning.
activate.
They're lightning rods. You know. Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Totally. All those
And
people.
I think that a lot of times the villains are taking an unpopular stance, but then
Hmm.
I also think that there is a way for someone to fight that is villainous, though they're often right. I like to call it Brandy Glanville disease after Brandy
Huh.
Glanville, because like that season when she showed up and she's on crutches and the Richard sisters are being
Iconic.
terrible to her, like she's right. Like they're being awful to her. And so, but she's standing up for herself by being like, you're a fucking cunt on meth, which is villainous behavior.
Next question.
Though,
Yeah, and I think that an important thing in that thing that you just mentioned is like there is still an element of sort of wanting to root for them, right? Like
yes,
they're villainous and they go against the grain, but they haven't completely lost you, right? Like there's still
yes,
like something in them that's like you want them to succeed in some way.
yeah. And I appreciate their craft in the
Yes.
reality television arts and sciences.
Right.
It's like, I would never do that. I would not want to be friends with you, but I respect that you are here keeping us entertained by creating conflict and crazy dynamics
For,
amongst your castmates.
for sure. So I alluded to this when I reached out to you also at the beginning of this episode that I feel like the tides are kind of turning on this kind of character, on this kind of personality.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a tide shift when it comes to how people take reality TV villains, particularly on Bravo? And sort of when did you first start noticing it, if you have?
Well, I feel like in general, I want to say I don't like the social media trend that has been happening for a while, but I'm seeing more and more of the like, if you don't like Erica Jane, let's say, you're on Twitter going, you're a fucking cunt. You should kill yourself. Your family's ugly. You're horrible. It's like,
Yeah,
I think part of
like
the
rein it
reason
in.
we have and love reality shows is so that we can have people to gossip about, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And you should do that like a normal person and not tag them and do it behind their back.
Yes. No
Like,
tagging. Yep.
call Erica a cunt all you like, but don't tag her. Don't say it to her face. Say it behind her back like a
Say it on a
human.
podcast for like a normal person. Yeah.
Exactly. Erica's not listening. I also don't think she's cunt. But anyway,
Me neither. Me neither. I think she's
I
cunty.
just 100%. But like, so I don't like that general trend
Yes.
of people talking poorly. But I also think, yeah, there's this thing where if fans are saying, oh, Tamara needs to be fired because she's so mean. And yes, I do think Tamara is often mean and she's never loyal. But like Carlos said on your podcast about bringing her back, you needed her to be that force multiplier to keep the story
Hmm.
happening, to keep it chugging along. And so if you were to fire all the people you didn't like, the show would just be like goody goodies sitting around telling each other how pretty they are. And that's not
And selling their
what we
products.
signed up
Exactly.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we kind of need that. And so I think that doesn't mean a villain should never be fired. And I
Right.
am
Right.
happy to talk to you about when and why they should be.
Yeah.
But I don't think the reaction should be because I don't like this person, they should be fired. I think the reaction should be, that more like I love to hate them.
Right. Right. And I also feel like part of the I don't like this person or they're too mean and they should be fired. Part of that is like this also a tension between what is sort of acceptable behavior in real life and acceptable behavior on a reality show. And those two things are
Absolutely.
not the same. Those two things are very different,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a newer casual fan who sort of brought that sort of sentiment. Cause I do think that like a, a big number of people were sort of injected into this viewership and fan base in the pandemic. And they aren't
Yes.
as like, I don't know, well read when it comes to the Bravo back
Yeah.
catalog, you know? And like I do think that like there's been within that, there's something about like a newer viewer who has a lower tolerance for the bad behavior in some weird way, you know?
No, yeah. And I also think that there's a difference, with me and you, who I've been watching Housewives in real time since the beginning. Like I've
Exactly. Yeah.
never binged a season of Housewives in the way that I have binged other reality shows. And I think that when you binge and you're watching Ramona
Good point.
season after season after season being terrible, you're like, I hate this
It's like
lady.
yeah, it's like the tension's like rising and rising and rising in the tank and then you just blow. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That makes
Whereas
sense.
we got like Ramona drives me crazy. The next season comes back, you're
Take
like,
a
maybe she
break.
won't be as
Right.
bad.
Right.
And we also grow with her. We realize how she's a part of the whole thing. And I think that perspective is different. And I hope that as these fans who had binged everything and are now caught up will start to feel
Mellow out.
kind of a similar way that we do. Yeah.
Right, totally. So let's get back to the point you said about like there is a point when somebody maybe should be fired or they should be put on pause if they're the villain. And I think my understanding of something like that is like you look at somebody like Lisa Rinna probably, and it's like
Yep.
she was so good for so long until her last maybe season and a half, 2 seasons where she maybe overstepped or maybe got in the muck too much and she needed some
Yes.
perspective. I think I kind of need that. I think that kind of person needs perspective. They need a break. They need
Yes.
some fresh air, touch some grass, and then maybe return in a couple of years. That's sort of how I view that. But in your
Yes.
mind, what's the distinction between when a villain should be kept around and when they should be let go or put on pause?
So I think that Lisa Rinna is a great, like you just summed it up perfectly in the case of Lisa Rinna. I think that there are some villains who kind of lose the plot, or in Lisa's case, kind of paint themselves into a corner a little bit.
Right.
And it started to get inauthentic. Like you could see her producing. And so I think that when the villainous person is making stuff up or calling on certain emotions that may not really be there, that's a good case for them to get fired. I think there's another case where they're so villainous, they lose everybody. And I'm thinking of a Danielle Staub.
Sure.
Like season 2, like where she pissed everybody off so much she couldn't film with anybody. Monica Garcia, I know there are a lot of people who want her to come back, but if she came back, it would have been
there's no anchor
just
to the
everyone
cast.
against Monica the whole season, and we would have hated it. And also, I think that there's something about the way that people fight. And I'm thinking of someone like Kelly Dodd, great villain.
Yeah.
Also Monica, where too much going low. Candice Dillard Bassett, same thing. When you're like calling people ugly, calling people fat, being juvenile,
just cutting to the
making fun
bone
of people's looks.
Yeah.
Like I think that's too much. And now I would like to make my case for why Teresa Giudice should be fired.
Okay,
and
go for it.
I think she's a great villain. She's given us a lot, but I feel like we've gotten to a place where she won't let the show progress. Like her villainy is keeping everybody down because she can't handle anyone disagreeing with her. She can't move on from anything. So we're just relitigating the same stories over and over again. She fights down and dirty. So she brings everyone down to her level where she's just calling names. And I feel like it gets to a point where she's so stuck on Melissa and all this other bullshit that like it can't move forward. And I think the same thing was happening a little bit with Lisa Rinna, where she couldn't let go. And that's why I think Tamra Judge is such a good villain, because she always has an ally. She, you know, and she's not loyal to anybody, but she always has someone who's liking her at that moment.
Yeah.
And she'll, you know, and she stays in the show. And it's not always about her drama. It's sometimes about her facilitating other people's drama.
I think a lot of the time it actually is that latter one, especially the past 2 seasons. It's her bringing things up. It's her spreading the information. It's her calling things out, which is great. But it also deflects anything from her. And I think that's actually something that we've seen play. We'll get to Tamra actually a little bit, but like that's something we're seeing play out off the show too with the Vicky stuff, like and how Vicky's sort of attacking her with her kids, like that hasn't happened on the show because Tamra's been able to deflect on the show. But let's circle back to Tamra. Yes. So basically, you know, when I think the reason why it's sort of percolating now in my head so intensely is because we've had 2 really big examples of this issue this year. And the first one was with Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules, I think. And, you know, we don't have to relitigate what this season of Vanderpump Rules was, but it was going to be a really boring, staid season where nobody was sort of like bringing Sandoval in. Nobody was questioning anything. It was just going to be about like the aftermath. And we're all here for Ariana, which is great. And I think that's probably in real life what the situation would have been. But on a show, you need somebody who is going to maybe hear Sandoval out, or maybe ask the tough questions, or maybe, you know, call out something about Ariana and Katie, whether it's deserved or not. You know, like you need that person mixing it up. And obviously when Lala started doing that this season, it was really controversial. People did not take it well. She went off social media for a while, and like she couldn't really handle the heat, which was really intense, that was being directed at her.
Yeah.
So what did you make of the whole Lala situation? And like, did the punishment match the crime in terms of the reaction to her, or what did you make of all of that sort of with some space?
I think that especially at that end of the season when she says that thing about Ariana's Beyonce, or, you know, whatever, like, I think that Lala was the one brave enough to say what a lot of people on that show were probably thinking, and what some in the fandom were thinking about Ariana too. And yeah, I don't think the punishment fit that. I think that we should, I always try to understand a little bit where they're coming from.
Totally.
You know, and like assume that all the housewives are right. And so like, okay, if in Lala's mind she's right, why is she right? And how is she seeing that? And I think that from Lala's point of view, I think it does make a lot of sense. And like you said, she's keeping the show humming. She's having lunch with Joe. She's hanging out with Schwartz. She's doing the things that nobody else wanted to do to keep it going as an enterprise. And I think that we needed a Lala to do that. I think that my problem sometimes with Lala specifically is she doesn't seem to have maybe a backbone, a strong word, a moral compass is another. She doesn't seem to have like a guiding principle.
She flip-flops on how she's
yeah, to kind of like fit however she feels in the moment. And I think that if you see someone like Lisa Rinna, who did a great job of it for Real Time, like she was always like, here, you know, it made sense. Like, here's my MO. Here's how I feel about things. Own it, own it, own it. Yeah. And like Lala doesn't seem to have a philosophy of how one should behave on a reality show in the same way that some other great villains do.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like, a big thing with Lala was that basically there were like recent examples and receipts of her thinking the exact opposite way as what she was saying on the show and on Amazon Lives and wherever else she was saying it. Yeah. And it was contradictory, you know? And so I think that's a really good point. And that's sort of why people took issue with it, sort of. It just wasn't, and I think sort of to defend her a little bit, it was sort of like, we know now that Alex Baskin, the executive producer of the show, had like held this meeting midway through the season where he basically was like, you guys got to mix it up more. You guys got to the season's going to be bad. And so part of the reason why she did that was because her boss was essentially telling her to do that, you know? And so again, did she take it too far? Probably. Did she go the right route? Probably not. But she was doing her job. She was doing her job, you know?
No. And I think that we see that in a lot of great villains. They want to keep the lights on. They want to keep that paycheck coming. They want to keep the show humming. And so they're willing to kind of put themselves second in a way to, you know, keep the thing going. Yeah. And I get it. Lala's got babies to feed, you know?
Totally. And I think also the
So,
other
yeah.
aspect of that was that she was literally going against like the people's princess and Ariana Madix. Like she was going against like the
Yes.
ultimate person that people feel defensive of. And so it was just like
Yes.
too soon for that to be happening, basically, I feel.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
also think that, you know, maybe part of what's going on with villains is maybe the inverse of stan culture, where I feel like Ariana is received by some people like how the Barbs view Nicki Minaj. She could do no wrong, and we
Totally.
will defend her to the death. And if you're against her, then I'm gonna dox you and send the SWAT team to your house, you know, go crazy on you. And I think that Lala ran afoul of that with Ariana.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. So the other big example, Brian, this year has been Tamra. We're watching it play out right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
where she's not just distanced herself from Shannon and sort of put a pause on that friendship, but she's also really kind of objectively kicking her while she's down, not just by calling out you know her still drinking and sort of taunting her with this DUI stuff, but also because she's aligned with Alexis.
Yep.
She's not kind of going out of her way to speak out against John suing her for $75,000. Like she's kicking her while this is happening, and it's not the best look, and fans are really riled up about it. Thoughts on how Tamra's carrying herself this season?
I see. I think Tamara's a great villain. I've been
Hmm.
doing a bit of an OC rewatch, and
Okay.
so I've been seeing. You know, it's like you think about Tamara's best friends being Vicky and Shannon,
Yeah.
and half of the seasons they fucking hate each other. So it seems
Yeah.
like, uh, a little bit of Tamara, same old Tamara, and but I do think at some point she needs to have a little bit of loyalty to somebody or something. And I think we're not really seeing that. And I think she's really picked the wrong horse with Alexis here.
She
And
did.
but I think that this season is really kind of strange because John and Alexis are being so terrible to Shannon that we feel bad for Shannon. So we forget all the terrible things about Shannon.
Absolutely.
And I think Tamra's reminding us of that, but because she seems in league with John and Alexis, we're like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
misread. I think there's a misread that happened because I think that when Shannon first got the DUI, people like weren't really in her corner about it. She was
yeah,
kind of the butt of the joke, but then, and so I think Tamara probably saw that, and she saw some probably vocal people asking for Alexis to come back, and she sort of just rode that. She rode that wave, and unfortunately, a bigger wave was coming from the other
right.
side, and yeah,
But also Tamara knows that everybody needs an ally, and if it was
yes,
just everyone against Alexis,
you're right.
it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be interesting. And so yeah, for Tamara to take that side, I think is good. But we've also the funny thing to me about Tamara this season is less between Shannon and Alexis and more the Katie Heather thing, which is an
Mm,
annoying fight.
it's annoying.
But yeah, but Tamara is saying Gina set her up. Gina set her up because the way Tamara plays Housewives, Tamara would have set her up. Like
She's the
Tamara's
Gina.
projecting
Yeah,
what she would have done onto Gina. And I don't think Gina set her up, but I
I don't
think
think so either.
Tamara thinks Gina set her up because that's how Tamara plays the
Yeah,
game.
that's a good thing to
And
point. Yeah, that's a good thing to point out. Yeah, 100%.
yeah. And so
Yeah,
I'll be curious next season if Tamara comes back, how she like handles it. But I feel like she's used to being unpopular enough that she's not
right,
gonna care that much.
right. And I think so. One thing that's obviously also still playing out is sort of off camera. She's been in bed for 2 weeks with a peeling face,
Oh my
and
god,
yeah,
with
it's
that
been a
crusty
lot.
ass face.
There was this moment earlier this week or last week where Vicky basically said she called her out about her being estranged from her daughter and her this
Yeah.
this complicated relationship with her kids and sort of picking the show over her children. And Tamra, that clearly hit a nerve with Tamra, and I understand why. It was a savage thing to say.
Yeah.
And we get this tearful moment from Tamra. She's like, take my spot on the show, I don't even want it, whatever, it's not worth it. And to me, like that's something that we haven't really seen on the show, since Tamra's return, is like somebody calling out tough things from her life. She's able, as I said earlier, sort of to deflect onto other people, and just sort of the spotlight is shifted.
Yes.
And it's like
Yeah.
Vicky's willing to call that out, because Vicky, for a variety of reasons, probably because they have history, because Vicky wants to be back on the show. There's a million reasons, but Vicky's
Yeah.
willing to do something that other people are not willing to do with Tamra, because people aren't really calling out anything in Tamra's life on the show, which I think is really interesting. Like, why not hit her there? Because they aren't the villain.
Well, no, but I feel like when you're at a level of like Tamra, or even Heather Dubrow, they're all a little afraid of her.
Right.
And they don't want to mess with Tamra because they don't want Tamra coming for them. So, let's leave Tamra alone. Let's leave Heather alone, because I mean, I'm sorry, but as surely as Leah Michelle cannot read, Heather Dubrow called those paparazzi. I'm telling you. Like, sorry, Heather.
What an analogy. What an analogy.
So yeah.
But like why doesn't, but it's like I'm watching it and I'm like, well, why isn't Shannon, who is literally getting torn to pieces by Tamra, why doesn't she hit her there? Why doesn't she go out? Because she's I guess she just like doesn't have, she just doesn't, she's not thinking straight right now. But it's like, when Tamra's already coming for you, like, what do you have to lose?
Well, I think maybe the distinction we're trying to make here in like villains and otherwise is like a reactive housewife versus a proactive housewife.
So true.
Where Shannon is always reacting to what someone else has done to her. Shannon's always the victim. You did this to me, and I'm going to say something about it. Whereas so it's not in her natural response to go after someone in the way that it is Tamra's, whereas Tamra will go after somebody and be like reactive and like, naked wasted and all that, where Tamra is like doing it. And so maybe that's the distinction too, because she's really the only one on the cast who will do that. Like Emily, Gina, Heather, Jen, they're not
in their
attackers.
Nature. No.
Yeah.
No. So, we see this intense reaction. People are calling for her to be fired for how she's treating. Like, it's just the people are really on the Tamra hate train right now because of her behavior on the show. And I feel like there are a variety of ways in which she can take her next step, and I feel like there's a big opportunity for her coming up at the reunion for her to kind of use that, which is a big utility at her expense. There's this reunion where you've watched the show, you've watched how you've acted, you've watched fan reactions, you've seen what everybody else is saying. One of the things that Tamra could do to maybe curry some favor back, or show some remorse, show some compassion, issue an apology, extend an olive branch, however you want to say it, at the reunion. And I feel like that's something that Lala didn't do, which was to her detriment.
Correct. 100%. And I'm thinking also of Candace's last reunion, where they're like, any regrets? Would you have done it differently? Nope. I would have said all those terrible things all over again.
Right.
And
same with Monica.
That's what. Right. And then I'm thinking of that reunion where the Tres Amigas decided to forgive each other. And then it's like, you're back to the races. We say this all the time. It's about conflict and conflict resolution. And if you won't resolve the conflict, you can't have the show. And I think that's what Tamra is great at, is apologizing, being over it, putting last season in last season, and moving forward with people, and doing it in as genuine a way as Tamra can do. And I think that's what makes, she's been on the show for 16 out of 18 seasons or something, whatever, 14, something like that. She's been on a long time. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah. And the other sort of way that I think can affect somebody's behavior is like, I'm thinking about Giselle, who we just saw the Potomac trailer, just came out earlier today. And she, I think, has been a really good instigator on Potomac over the years. She's somebody who has lost, but she's also somebody who's lost a lot of the fan base in terms of, I think, how she treated Candace. The Candace loyalists really don't like Giselle. And, in the trailer, there's not that much Giselle. Like she's not
No.
really stirring the pot. She's not really. I think we're going to see a Giselle who sort of took a slight step back from that behavior, and that's the other way that the reaction can really, I think, impact the show. Is like then we get somebody who's like too afraid to go there at
Yes.
risk of getting even more hateful comments, at risk of alienating even more people, and that I also hate to see that because then the person's not being their natural, their natural self.
Yes, inauthenticity is the enemy of these shows, and so when you get people double thinking, what are they going to say about this on Twitter? What are the fans going to think? They're inauthentic, and it's not as good. And you see this the most on Beverly Hills, where they're
Yes.
really afraid to tussle because they're always worried about what everybody thinks, and then you end up with Dorit, who might have been separated from her husband for the past like 19 seasons and like won't talk about it because
Right.
she's afraid of how it's going to come off, And that's not what we want. We want you being real and being honest and out there.
Yeah.
And us calling them out, and I'm not saying you should say what Tamara's doing is
Of
right,
course not. No, that's
but
not. No, that's
there's
not it.
there's a way to have these discussions and talk about these things and be critical without it being, you should be fired, you should lose your job, I hate you,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. And then that's sort of what the crux of my worry is as somebody who loves and watches these shows is like these people are human beings. So when they're receiving like all this insane reaction from fans which is it just a lot of it crosses the line. I'm worried that at some point it's just going to scare all these people off the show. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like to me, like
absolutely.
Tamra Judge is somebody with a really thick skin. Giselle Bryant, really thick skin. Lala Kent sometimes has a really thick skin. Rinna had a
Yeah.
pretty thick skin, I would say.
Yep.
But it kind of these things clearly hit a nerve with people, even with really thick skins. And there's only so much somebody can take, I think, before it's like, is this even? I mean, it's worth it for the paycheck, but is it worth it for like on a human level of like, can I handle this emotionally?
Well, and I also think that it makes the pool of people who would be great housewives smaller
Right.
because they see how fans treat them. And especially on a show like Beverly Hills, where you might attract someone with some level of fame. Like why would Denise Richards come back on the show knowing that everyone is going to talk so much shit? Like, would we ever get another person of Denise Richards'
Right.
infamy on the
Totally.
show, knowing they're walking into this viper's nest?
Yeah.
And so I think that fans think they're helping the show, but I don't know that they always are.
Right. And then I think one of the effects of getting and I actually like the reboot, but like the Roni reboot doesn't really have anybody who's willing to really go there. I think that's an issue.
Yes,
And that's why Jenna
because
Lyons
they're all
is
too
comfortable
worried.
being there. Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's how
yeah,
Rebecca Minkoff can be there and probably be questioned maybe one time about being a Scientologist this season. It's like
right.
if Lala Kent was on that cast, she'd be calling that out from episode 2. You know what I mean?
100%. Yes. And I think that is my biggest problem with the Roni reboot is that there's no villain
There's no
really.
biting nature to it. Yeah.
No, there's people we don't like, but no one's willing to get dirty enough. And two, it's not that funny.
Yeah,
I
it's
need
not
it to
funny.
be a little bit funnier. I'm hoping we'll get that from the next season.
Maybe
The
from Bran.
trailer.
Yeah, we'll see. You know,
Eh, eh,
I always try to be
eh.
cautiously optimistic when the trailer doesn't really do it for me. But when you compare
Yes,
that to the Salt Lake
same.
City trailer, it's a little bit night and day. So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
So, and I watched the premiere of Salt Lake, and it is
it's good,
real good.
really good,
Yeah.
really good.
So,
Uh,
I'm excited for all of us. The thing about Salt Lake, though, is it might be all villains.
I was just the wheels were turning in my head about that because I was like, the thing about that cast is that they have I guess 5 if you include Mary, the kind of 5 OG people that are still on that show.
Yeah.
Every single one of them is willing to call shit out. All of them are. All of them are at
Yes.
different moments. And
Yeah.
That's a
Right.
unique cast. That's a unique cast.
Yeah, and every season, the who is friends and who is enemies is different.
Hmm.
And yeah, but it also feels organic
Yeah.
to the situation that they're in. And
Right.
so I think that's why Salt Lake continues to be so good.
Right. Totally. Well, Brian, any lingering thoughts on reality TV villains? I feel like we've really unpacked this, but like it's definitely an issue. It's definitely like a problem to be sort
Yeah.
of watched, I think.
Do you have any like non Housewives, non Bravo villains that you're a big fan of?
I mean, yes, but most of them are from kind of back in the day, like I think about like on Big Brother, like
Evil Dick.
Evil Dick, Rachel Riley to me is an amazing
Oh, Rachel
villain.
Riley.
Like
Yeah.
Janelle had some great villain qualities to her, I think.
Yes.
I'm trying to think who was even like on. I mean, the ultimate villain is New York Tiffany Pollard. Like she was
Yes.
fantastic. Um, who else is there? I'm trying to think of Survivor people who are really good at it. But I mean, Richard Hatch was amazing. But
Yeah.
it's
But then there was like Russell Hantz was like too much.
right,
He was like
totally.
too
Sandra's a
evil.
good
But
villain.
like
Yeah,
Sandra,
yeah, totally.
excellent villain.
Yeah, and I think the thing about like a show like Survivor or Big Brother is like you can be a villain for how like what is it 3 weeks 4 weeks that they film for, and then you're not on
Yeah.
TV anymore. You don't have to come back. You don't have to like worry about having to come back and be well liked. It's like you're one and done. And I think that does make the stakes a little lower in terms of like what you're risking by alienating people essentially, right?
But and I also think that on the show, on shows like Big Brother or Survivor or The Challenge or any of those competition shows, there's a goal. So if you're a
Right.
villain and you win or you get to the end or you do well, it's showing how your villainy is paying off.
You'll do whatever it
Whereas on
takes.
Housewives, yeah, there is no winning, though there is, but like it's
Right.
a bit more diffuse. So I think that that's why fans have a harder time with
Right.
villains
It
on
was
shows like
like,
that.
yeah, it was like when in the Beverly Hills season when Rinna like, like, sacrificed herself at the altar to make sure that Denise Richards admitted to hooking up with Brandy Glanville. I was like, why do you care so much about this? Like, and it was
Yes,
because she was
right,
lying, or she thought she was lying, but whatever it was. But like, I'm like, we're not. There's no prize at outing
right,
Denise Richards for hooking up with a woman. It's like, what is that? That's where to me
right.
actually Rinna crossed a line, and kind of that's where she needed a break. But that's a good example of that, I
Yeah.
guess.
But Evil Dick's trying to win $500,000.
Period.
So like,
Yeah.
okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do it too. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a million, maybe a million. But
Oh my God.
would you ever go on like a Big Brother, a Survivor, one of those?
I think Big Brother would have the most appeal to me. I don't do well. Yeah, I
Interesting.
don't do well in the outdoors and like not having a lot to like not having I can be a picky eater, so I don't know if Survivor would be the best environment for me. But I think Big Brother could be good. I think I could do the social game well and and I get bored as fuck, but like
Oh my God. Yeah.
I don't know. There's
Yeah.
something about it that would have the most appeal. What about you?
I would go on Survivor in a heartbeat. I think that I do not also am a picky eater and don't do well with the outdoors, but I think that would be part of the fun. Like if I could
Right.
conquer Survivor, I could do anything.
Sure.
Also, if I was on Big Brother, the 24-hour, I have maybe sometimes an edgy sense of humor,
Oh
and I
yeah.
don't know that the
You might
24-hour
come out
nature.
canceled.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what I'm
That's a scary part
afraid
about
of.
it, for sure. That's like the
Yeah.
whole that's like the entire time you're doing a challenge of like let me make sure I'm watching my words the entire time, basically.
Yeah, right. For like
Yeah.
months. But like, I don't think I could sync myself on Survivor with the amount
No.
I would be in the
No.
edit. I
No.
think I would be fine.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
other one,
But
Amazing Race would be fun too, but you'd have to have the right partner.
absolutely.
Like I think that like
Yes.
certain people, if I was paired with them, like we would just like hate each other by the end, and that's a big risk, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like my husband and it might be the end of our relationship. We went
Got
on
it.
Amazing
Okay,
Race
so
together.
don't go on Amazing Race. Don't go on Amazing Race,
No,
Brian.
we're not.
Okay.
At least not with him. I'll go with my mom. That would be
Okay.
like way more fun. She has a cane. She's real slow. We'd lose.
Stop.
I mean,
Oh my God, I'm obsessed. Well, Brian, thanks for doing this. This was
my
great
pleasure.
convo. So fun. Always with you.
Thanks.
What do you have to plug? Do your plugs working well, your newsletter? I love your newsletter, your recaps, loving everything.
Yes. So I'm currently recapping OC, and I'll be doing New York when that's back on
Okay.
vulture.com. Those go right up. And I'm doing Survivor. Um,
Fun.
yeah, which I'm excited to do a little non-Housewives.
Yeah.
And so those go up on Vulture right after the episodes. And then you can sign up for my newsletter, the Housewives Institute Bulletin at vulture.com/housewives. That comes out every 2 weeks. The next one is about Mormon wives versus Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Oh,
So
people who listen to this
check it
know that
out.
I have not been I can't shut up about that show, so I'm excited to read that. That's going to be a good one.
That's why
Yeah.
I follow you on
Hell
Twitter,
yeah.
girl. I know.
Yeah. Brian, thanks for doing this. We'll do it again soon. I want to gab.